Welcome back to Briggs on Books, the international talk show where we talk to authors, podcasters, artists, filmmakers, script writers, all kinds of creative people that are, I guess we can say, people that are communicating a message. Our next guest coming up is a podcaster who has a very interesting podcast, Julie Rebboah. Welcome, Julie.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm so glad to be here with you today.
Tell our viewers where you are located.
I'm in the Monterey Bay area on the beautiful California coast.
Now, you call yourself, or somebody calls you, a Christian Mental Health Communicator, and you do that through the podcast primarily, or is there other activities you're doing?
Well, I have a website called FromBudToBloom.com, and on there I have some articles that relate to relationships and faith and psychology. So that's one avenue. And then the other one is through podcasting.
Now, I have been researching myself a bit on people who face trauma in their childhood and ways to deal with it and come around it. Of course, there's those of us that believe a faith-based approach is, the only way that really works. But tell us about your work, what you guys talk about on the podcast, and how people can tune in.
Well, my mission is to help people live redefined, renewed, and restored through the transformative healing that Jesus Christ can offer us. Now, that's not to say that people can't use psychology and use psychotherapy as an avenue, but I believe that true full healing happens in addition with faith. So that's sort of the overall message. But we talk about lots of things that deal with childhood trauma that are a result of family dysfunction. So some of the topics might be emotional abuse. What does that look like? Did that happen to me? And if it did, what can I do about it? Or trying to capture negative thoughts. How do we overcome negative thoughts and replace them with positive thoughts? So all kinds of different topics that fall under that umbrella.
Interesting. I know a couple kids are grown-ups now in their 30s. They went through, their parents got divorced when they're just becoming teenagers, and I thought, well, these kids came through this pretty well adjusted, and their parents handled it really well. But now we find out in their 30s, they're still having a trauma. They went through a real trauma that they have not recovered from and haven't met it face-to-face properly.
Yeah, that's not uncommon. And so, through the umbrella of childhood trauma could be divorce. It could be any type of abuse. It could be neglect that was encountered, abandonment, household domestic violence, or a parent or a caregiver who might have had some substance abuse use issues. So, there's this whole spectrum of things that can affect us as we're developing our brains and our bodies and our relationships and learning how to communicate and relate to other people.
Now, let me ask you this about some details. By the way, I'm going to put up this beautiful graphic from Room to Bloom podcast with Julia Rebboah. We even rehearsed it now. I can't say it correctly. But to take for somebody, there's a lot of people out there who have no idea how to access a podcast. People are, say, like older, maybe like me. And I truly, until this year, never went out to try to find a podcast. How can somebody find your podcast?
Well, there are a few episodes that are on my website, so there's no linking to podcasts required. Just at
that sounds like the easy way to do it.
Absolutely. You go on there, there's a little link that says podcast, and then there are the 3 most recent episodes there that you can listen to. Or if you've got an app, like you can even look me up on YouTube or Apple Podcast app, just type in Room to Bloom, and it should pop up.
They will find it. That way they could access all the episodes.
Yes, and Amazon Music, all the major podcast platforms.
Now, for now, your podcast is an audio podcast, kind of like listening to the radio, I guess.
Yes.
And hopefully in the future, we'll be able to see you do it as well as hear it. Who should be listening to this?
Well, so anyone who has experienced childhood trauma that they still feel like maybe they need some help with, and who's also looking to integrate their faith into their recovery and their healing. So that's who this is for. And yes, you're right. Currently, the podcast is just audio based. It was a great way for me just to get started. But season 2, we will have the video and the audio available so people can see who I'm talking to and relate to people that way.
And that was my next question. Is it just you, or you have guests each week?
Yes. So I'm currently a graduate student in mental health and wellness. And so I interview mental health professionals who are, licensed social workers, licensed marriage and family therapists, certified mental health coaches, in addition to people who are authors who've written about their own surviving and recovering through faith. I just interview a bunch of really great, interesting people. And the theme that I find with all of these guests is that they have so much peace and joy. Like you can really, that's why I wanted to go with the video, because I can see that they've got all this peace and joy, but I want other people to see that too.
Yeah, as a person who talks to and interviews authors every day, there's a lot of people who've done books on this subject that have gone through quite a trauma and experience and come out the other side. And it's great to hear those stories and read those books. It offers hope for those. I'm thinking of people who should listen to your podcast was my question. Who should listen? I think people who maybe know somebody who's gone through some trauma. They don't know how to advise them or counsel them. Some people who don't live their life with a strong faith or any faith at all, they might find, by listening to your podcast, they might find a path toward more faith.
Absolutely, because also one of the common themes is that everybody has gone through something, and we can either be kind of trapped by the trauma and the past, or we can find avenues towards healing because there is hope for a brighter future. There is hope, for a purpose-filled life where we remember the things that happened to us, but they don't control our decisions anymore.
Yeah, I know very little about this. I have no training in it. One thing I do know is if people are carrying this trauma, if they don't find a way to confront it and get beyond it, it doesn't go away by itself.
It doesn't for a lot of people, which is one of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast is, number one, share hope that it's possible. 2, that people don't feel alone. There are other people who have gone through this and have come out on the other side really vibrant and successful. And 3, to know that God really does want people to heal. He loves us that much. And so, I think if people are listening today even, this might be, hey, this could be for you. So something to think about.
Yeah, I tell authors that I talk to on this subject, first I tell them you're very brave to write this book. It is very brave to kind of expose yourself to the world like that, but almost all of them come out at the end of the book with the hope that even if one person reads that book and says, hey, I'm not the only one, really? This has happened to many people, and people have come out the other end okay, that they can inspire people to get past their trauma.
Absolutely. One of the common things is that people keep all this stuff bottled inside. They don't want anybody to think anything's wrong with them. They don't want anybody to know that they've been through this. And so there's a lot of hiding and shame. And so when people are able to step out and bravely share their story, people can relate to that authenticity. And with authenticity, we're able to acknowledge it and we're able to move forward.
Yeah. And as far as your podcast goes, not every person can commit themselves to a 4 or 5 hour book reading someone else's story to get their inspiration. So yours gives it in a shorter format over weeks at a time. And I'm very excited about what you're doing. I'm very happy that you're doing that. Now, do you do one episode a week? How does it work?
Well, so right now I'm releasing 1 episode a week. So I pre-recorded 12 episodes. And now I'm releasing them 1 week at a time. And they're between 35 to 45 minutes. So I wanted them to be, something that somebody could listen to in their during their commute in the car, or maybe while they're throwing in some laundry. So not too long, but enough information that they have, like, oh, that book might be really helpful for me.
Yep.
Or, ooh, I might need that website for that domestic violence hotline. Or, ooh, maybe I want to work with that mental health professional. Here is the link to their website. So trying to just make it very accessible.
It's amazing how our lives have changed, that we have this access to listening to things. I listen at the gym. I listen when I'm doing gardening, doing whatever. It's so our world has changed for the better. I think this is one of the good things about it, our advancement in technology, that people can do that. Now, you told us a little bit. We could find your podcasts on your website, which we have on the screen, which is from budtobloom.com. What else can they find there?
They can find articles on basically relationships, like boundary setting, or maybe they're afraid to go to church. Who is church for? Who were Jesus's actual disciples? Like, we think of people at church as needing to clean up their lives before they go, and that's not necessarily true. So it's just really for anyone who is seeking to use their faith or integrate faith into their healing.
Yeah, that's great. And also we have your Instagram address up there, From Bud to Bloom Ministry. Everything's kind of named the same. How convenient that is. So people should be able to find Julie wherever you look. But your website can lead them to finding, I know you have a few episodes of the podcast on there, but it could lead them to finding your full podcast, I would imagine.
Yes. Yeah, it's all there. So my Instagram link is on there. The podcast is on there. So yeah, that's a central hub. Yeah.
I must say, I don't say this very often, but you have the best web connection. Your video, your audio, everything is so perfect. I could imagine your podcast is also very high quality. We're really out of time, Julie. I could talk to you all day, though. What are the last things you'd like our viewers to know before we have to go?
Well, I would just like to share that whatever you've been through, that's the beginning, but you still have your present and your future, and God wants to make it better with you. So that's what I would like to leave listeners with, hope.
That is beautiful. Julie Rebboah, am I close?
Rebboah.
Rebboah. It's so easy. I don't know why I can't get it. Julie Rebboah. Go to her website. Start there, from budtobloom.com. Thank you, Julie. You've inspired me. I'm going to go listen to your podcast.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
And we will be back with more Briggs on Books. We have another author coming up right after this.